It seems that no matter how many warnings we receive, we just can't stop. The urge to consume is deeply embedded into human culture. No matter how hard we try, it remains a desire seemingly natural and innate. By nature, we are designed to adapt, repopulate, and consume. In a cycle of birth and death, with each generation taking and wanting more than the last. We will go to any means possible to satisfy the needs and desires our lifestyles demand. This is a story of how our consumption is changing the world around us. It is about a material we love to hate, but can't seem to live without. The delicate relationship between our consumerism and the natural world. How our plastic-wrapped utopia has pushed the planet's oceans to the brink of disaster. And how the unsustainable rate at which we consume is forging a new world for future generations. Our story begins in Sweden in 1965. An employee of the Swedish company Celloplast was about to create something which would symbolize the beginning of a new plastic revolution. He had created the first lightweight plastic shopping bag, a simple and harmless invention at first glance. But out of this came a new culture of consumer plastic goods, which we slowly began to rely on. Plastic was once considered a wonder material which promised to improve our quality of life, influencing everything from food packaging to modern medicine, and even the clothes we wear.
Her neon mouth with a blinking soft smile, nothing but an electric sign. You could say she has an individual style, she's a part of a carnival time. Super seal lady, chrome covered clothes you wear, cause you have no other. But I suppose no one knows you're my plastic fantastic lover.
However, the public gradually came to realize that plastic had a dark side. What price are we paying for our twisted addiction to consumption? Our wealth is now determined by how much stuff we have. We hoard and collect beyond what we need. We take great pleasure in owning things. We are a species gripped by our own chokehold. We have fashioned a world which at its core revolves around the teaching that we should not just buy, but buy new things. The latest upgrade for your phone, or the new dress you've been eyeing up. Ultimately, we stay obedient to the planned obsolescence with almost religious conviction. The economic pillars of our society rely on it. However joyful at times the phenomenon of consumerism may be, there should be no doubt. Just as it is our creator, so it will be our destroyer. Before you think, I'm not saying Armageddon is around the corner, but we have two choices. We either create and consume sustainable products, or we don't. Two paths, with two possible destinations. If we are to become more than a product of our own consumerism, we first need to think ahead. Not a day, a week, a month, a year, but in a time scale far greater than our own lifetimes. We have constructed cathedral-sized factories dedicated to slaughter, hidden from public view. Processing factories which turn animals into perfectly packaged products, displayed in neat rows, waiting under the daylight glow of an LED. We don't eat the packaging. So, where does it go? The same place most of our unwanted waste goes. A hole in the ground. Probably the most primitive solution you could think of. Some of our waste ends up as tiny particles of plastic in the ocean, small enough to enter the food chain of marine life. This in turn contaminates our food and has the potential of reaching our plates. For all the environmental troubles single-use shopping bags cause, the much greater impacts are in what they contain. Since the 1960s, our addiction to plastic has increased dramatically. Despite our best efforts to recycle our old plastic, we have struggled to meet rising demand. Our current strategy relies on the continual extraction of oil from the earth, and in doing so, this introduces new plastics into the market. The interaction between our love of plastic and the toxic oil it comes from has triggered a chain reaction of environmental decay, sustained and perpetuated by our quest for greater convenience. Due to the sheer amount of different applications plastic has in our lives, it would be hard, if not impossible, to stop using plastic completely. Plastic should be considered as a high-value material. It should only be used in products that need to last a long time. And at the end of its life, it should be easy to recycle. To take oil or natural gas that took millions of years to produce, to then make a disposable product that lasts a minute or a second before being discarded, reflects the unhealthy habit we have of consuming material objects without considering its repercussions. As our greed and ingenuity continues to disturb the Earth's natural equilibrium, the warning signs of disaster become ever more frequent. And as long as fossil fuels power the world, we are at risk of causing irreversible damage to our planet. Buying things makes us happy. It provides an instantaneous reward which can become addictive. Because plastic is cheap and can be molded into any shape, it is often the preferred material for manufacturing the products we buy. The sheer amount of different applications plastic has in our lives has made it an essential material in almost everything we own. Our waste is another's gold. Our broken laptops and TVs find their way across the world to developing nations, where our waste is hand-stripped and burnt until it eventually releases its precious elements. Although this is a form of recycling, the means by which these materials are extracted expose hazardous chemicals to both the human population and environment.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed?
Are you seeing this shit? Like some of it's bubbles and what have you. But if you look in the middle of them, there's like fucking chunks of crap.
Over the last 10 years, we have produced more plastic than during the whole of the last century. Even the process of producing bottled water requires around 6 times as much water per bottle as there is in the container. Our pollution and waste has pushed the world's oceans to the brink of disaster. Dead zones contaminated by vast bodies of plastic debris, where the ocean faring waste of our species accumulates. As a result, pollutants and plastics can affect and disrupt ecosystems and communities, far from the initial source of the waste. The concentration of plastic in our oceans is rising. Every year, at least 8 million tons of plastic leaks into the ocean, the equivalent to dumping the contents of 1 rubbish truck into the ocean every minute. If no action is taken, this is expected to increase to 2 per minute by 2030 and 4 per minute by 2050. As consumers, we only see the waste which reaches our shores and coasts. The planet's oceans are vast in size, making it harder to witness the true amount of human waste in our seas.
impressive, isn't it? What a joke.
Solving this issue will be difficult. Our current recycling methods are still inefficient, and bioplastics are more expensive to produce than non-petrol alternatives. One part of the solution could be to rethink the way our products are packaged. Eventually, cutting the demand for plastics in the first place. Manufacturers could also redesign plastic goods so they can be reused multiple times, and rethink their production methods to enable easier recycling. However, this doesn't solve the waste which is already formed. A good place to look for inspiration could be the natural world. After all, we shouldn't underestimate the ability life has to adapt and benefit from disaster.
Well, scientists in Japan have been digging through garbage bins and landfills near and far and have discovered a new strain of bacteria. It sounds gross, but this bacteria actually has a beautiful side. It might actually help solve a huge environmental problem.
It's not news that the world is addicted to plastic. And although many U.S. cities have recycling programs, still much of it ends up here.
And from the dumpster, it ends up in our landfills as a best-case scenario. But researchers at Kyoto University in Japan have just discovered a strain of bacteria that may change the face of our planet as we know it. They call it Ideonella sakaiensis, and this bacteria literally eats away at polyethylene terephthalate, or PET plastics in particular. All those water bottles, Coke bottles, even materials in your clothing, they all have PET. Plastics aren't generally biodegradable. They're made up of polymers, which are long, thin molecules of repeating building blocks called monomers. They cross-link with one another and form durable mesh that we know simply as plastic. And since they're carbon-based monomers, theoretically, they should be a good food source for microorganisms. Scientists know that over the millennia, bacteria and fungi have evolved together with natural materials to eventually develop their own natural way to eat what they can from any dead matter. But since plastics have only been around for about 70 years, experts believe the bacteria just needs time to evolve. The microorganisms just need time to figure out how to break down the carbon as an energy source. And given that plastic is relatively new, this might take a while. Good thing scientists are already now working on ways to expedite this evolution process.
Our current condition is like a ticking time bomb. However, all is not lost. Our fate is not terminal and can be evaded if the political powers support it. As technology advances, the price of renewable materials will become cheaper, opening up entirely new avenues for materialism and production. This new reality is unfolding before us and gives us the potential to change the future of our consumption. Whatever technology we create to counteract our damage, it will, in the end, most likely be determined by our own will to change.